Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your favorite podcast. This is Real Estate Investor MBA.com. We created Real Estate Investor MBA to leverage the knowledge of giants through synthesizing and providing much needed information to all investors, from the veteran investor to the new and aspiring investor. At Real Estate Investor MBA, we plan to cover pertinent information head on with our expert guests, who we will interview on what they are doing and preparing for in the days and years ahead. We aim to create MBA quality curriculum topics and themes from the information garnered among our interviewed guests in order to bring world-class value to our fellow community of listeners. We truly believe that rising water raises all ships, and by sharing this leveraged knowledge, we can create a stronger online community, which translates to stronger local, regional, and national communities. Your hosts are Jeremy Moyer, who is a veteran real estate investor and author of a new book called Are You Playing the Real Estate Game Blind? As well as Tejas Gosai, the owner of eXp Realty, the Tejas Gosai team, and also co-manager in a newly formed Regulation D private equity fund called the Lehigh Valley Private Equity Fund. Now let's get to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Real Estate Investor MBA. It is the best podcast in the world, according to both of our mothers. This is my partner, Jeremy Moyer. We set this podcast up as a COVID project, and it's really taken off. So we like to start with a big thank you to everybody. Jeremy, how many podcasts have we had so far?
I think it's 28, and these are 29th.
28. So yeah, it's just been fabulous, and the guests are great. If you want to know about the Lehigh Valley, we hit some pretty, I would say, complicated subjects. We're really trying to keep a high level of quality here. So anyway, without further ado, we are very excited for today's program. And here, with that, Jeremy, please introduce our guest.
Absolutely. So we're excited to announce our guest today is Yonah Weiss. Yonah is a powerhouse with property owners' tax savings. As the business director at Madison SPECS, nation cost segregation leader, he has assisted clients in saving tens of millions of dollars on taxes through cost segregation. He has a background in teaching and a passion for real estate and helping others. He's also a real estate investor and also a host of a top podcast called Weiss Advice. Yonah, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. It's a pleasure to be joining you guys.
I'm so excited. We have a lot to get through, but let's first start with, can you just tell our listeners a little bit more how you got started in real estate investing and then more within the cost segregation component?
Absolutely. So about 6 years ago or so, I had been a teacher for close to 20 years. I started in junior high school really, and it just continued in kind of private tutoring and that kind of stuff. And I loved it. And I still do. I mean, education is really my passion. I have 6 kids, so that's like every day is education, right?
Nice.
And, but about 6 years ago, I came across I was kind of looking for something additional or something else to kind of bring in some more income to the family as it was growing. And a lot of friends of mine were involved in real estate. I had never really paid attention to it. Even my parents actually own a few out-of-state rentals, and I never really paid attention to it. It wasn't my cup of tea. It was kind of, just focused on more spiritual things and more ethereal, philosophical, things like that. That was my education. That was my thing.
Bravo.
Business never really was. But I found that real estate was just such an interesting industry. And I found that it was an opportunity. Like, there's so many opportunities to just grow tremendously in a very short amount of time by connecting with the right people. And I found that, right away by just hooking up with a good old friend of mine who had been a mortgage broker for many years, owns a lot of real estate, his family did in property management. And we kind of reconnected. I ended up spending about 6 or 7 months with him, like daily. Just hanging out with him and just learning everything I could about commercial real estate. And that was a lot of fun. And that really just kind of jump-started my involvement in real estate, and I found it was really all about networking. That's really what real estate is all about who you know.
I'll jump in. I do think this is God's work. We are dealing with, Earth, and your property rights go to the center of the Earth. You get the airspace. I mean, it's a cosmic force. But
There is a lot to that.
yeah, I appreciate. I'm very spiritual. I don't really talk about it that much, but I think this is very good work. So yeah, sorry, had to just give you that bit and hand it back over.
Absolutely. No, you're 100% right. I mean, someone who's a spiritual person, you see spirituality in everything you do. So that was kind of my background into getting involved in real estate. And then I found this company a few years back, Madison, or they found me rather, and it was just a great match. They were looking for someone at the time to help with business development. I had a background in teaching. I really loved real estate, loved the networking aspect of it. And I found that cost segregation was this really seemingly complex topic that was just shouted in a lot of mystery. People just don't know what it is, and that was really the deciding factor for me to just stay involved in it, right? Because this is it's something people need to learn about. And hey, I'm like a teacher, and I like this stuff. I love helping people. It's just about saving taxes. So there we go. That's really the background.
Great. So let's jump right into there then and break down cost segregation. For those that are unsure, they might have heard the term, but they really don't understand it, or they haven't heard it at all. Can you just kind of give a 2-minute overview of what it is, and then we'll kind of go deeper?
Absolutely. It's really like a best tax strategy for real estate investors that exist. And so it's an income tax deduction. Is based on depreciation. And so depreciation is really, it's the same thing. Cost segregation is really just an advanced form of depreciation. And what you need to understand about it is really simply, when you buy a property, besides for your personal residence, any investment or business property, you get to take a income tax deduction against that entire value of the property, okay, subtracting a small amount for land, which doesn't depreciate. Now, that is usually spread out over a long period of time, and it's based on the concept that things go down in value. That's why it's called depreciation, but don't be confused by the name, because it's just a tax deduction. So you literally get to take this write-off. What we do is we come in and identify things. The IRS actually says depreciate at a faster rate, which will, by identifying and knowing what those things are, you can get those bigger tax deductions of those assets at a faster rate. So essentially, in a nutshell, it's a tax strategy to increase cash flow by getting more tax deductions up front.
Okay. So in a scenario, let's say which A or B, which would have like a bigger opportunity for tax savings? Like, would it be a building that has been totally rehabbed, at an operator, you're just buying the cash flow, like it's fully rented, tenants in place, versus a building that might have a value add component? You add cosmetic rehab, you do some amenity upgrades, get the rent bump, refi or sell the building. Is there more value, or where's really the play for cost segregation? Is it in both, or is it really in one of the other?
I would say it's equally in both. There are some slight variance and differences between each other, but the great thing about cost segregation, your depreciation basis, meaning the amount that you can take as a depreciation deduction from your property, is based on your purchase price. Okay, so whether it's a turnkey property or whether it's a value add, you are basing that and getting that depreciation based on that original purchase price. Now, mind you, anytime you add more money, more capital into the property, you can add that to your depreciation schedule, which means you can now take extra depreciation based on however much money you put into it. However, a refinance doesn't change that amount. Even if it's appraised for twice the value that you originally bought it for, that doesn't change the amount of depreciation you can take.
Okay. Now, is it beneficial to do like these cost segregation studies on smaller buildings? I guess, where's the main trade-off? A $200,000 building, a $1 million building, where does that look like?
So it used to be, totally relegated to huge commercial properties. It used to be something, and people didn't know about it. Even residential investors had never heard of it because it was something, oh yeah, that's for huge. And I still hear this today. I literally saw in Bigger Pockets yesterday this question, oh, I thought this was only for commercial buildings, not single families. It can be done on any type of property. Now, to answer your question, is there kind of a cutoff where it really makes sense? Well, that really has a lot to do with two things: the value of the property and how much is going to cost to actually get this cost segregation study done. Meaning, how much am I putting in and what's my return on that investment, right? So, as I mentioned before, when we're doing the cost segregation, we're front loading a certain portion of that depreciation from the property. So you're taking those deductions up front. Typically, it's somewhere between 15 and 20% minimally for residential properties, maybe up to 25% sometimes, which means if you take a $100,000 building, okay, you could potentially take about $20,000 of extra depreciation in the first couple of years. Now, to pay a couple $1,000s to get a few $1,000s of extra tax deductions doesn't really make sense, okay? But when you X that by 5 or 10, right, even 2 or 3 sometimes, you will get extra tax deductions. Sure, you'll have to pay a few $1,000s up front, but you will be able to take those extra, 20,000 or 10x that $200,000 tax deduction. It starts to make sense the bigger the property is.
Okay. And then if you're buying let's say we're looking at a syndication, 50-unit apartment building, $5 million, $10 million, whatever that number is, you have LP investors, partnership returns, you do a cost segregation study. Does that pass on to the members per their membership ownership? Is that how that, even to the passive investors to offset their taxes?
Usually there are several different ways to structure an investment, but the normal way of doing it is like you said, where each member has a share of the equity of the property. According to that percentage, that's what they will get passed through to them. So the depreciation of the entire property is one, and then that flows through to each investor according to their amount. However, there are other ways to to arrange an operating agreement to allocate the depreciation in different ways, but that is definitely the most common.
It's pretty powerful. Yeah.
I'll jump in. When you work with clients, is it, what stage? Like, hey, I'm a, seasoned investor. I have not worked with you before. Take me on, help, tell me what to do. Or, I'm just starting in real estate and I'm going to do a big syndication. Can I work with you and kind of package you up with my deal? We have a lot of syndicators that, we work with.
I really work with anyone and everyone. And it's because we're the biggest national company that's doing this, we work in every asset class out there. We do about 3,000 of these a year across the country. So there's a big volume. And with that comes a lot of different people, all shapes and sizes. But what I personally enjoy the most is working with people that really want to understand it from the get-go, meaning they're learning. Maybe it's their first investment, or maybe they've owned a few properties but never did cost segregation. They want to understand it, they want to learn it. Because again, I'm that teacher, right? I'm here to kind of share the knowledge and kind of answer all those questions, which people are like, well, does this make sense? Does that make sense? Just like exactly the questions, Jeremy, you guys are asking. This is the best.
I feel like a lot of this too is like legacy wealth considerations, right? Like a lot of folks that get into multifamily real estate are looking for, they want to quit their job to some degree, and then they want their kids to be in a good spot. I'm assuming that, the folks that you've been working with, there's some folks that have been doing this for a long time, and, they now have that generational wealth. Now you can put people on that path and kind of guide them in that direction. But that's, that there's room for that. And there's more people who are, coming into this industry, I guess. There's a lot more.
Absolutely. It's amazing to see, you hear about the tax benefits of real estate, right? And this is really it. I mean, depreciation and cost segregation, that is like the main, there are others as well, don't get me wrong, but when we talk about how to generational wealth, how to create more long-term wealth, it's by not paying income tax. It's by making a lot of money through real estate and then not paying any income tax on that. That compounds at a tremendous rate. And it's incredible to me to see people, watch people literally, who, like you're saying, they had jobs and they're investing in real estate kind of on the side just to get things going. And then they quit their jobs because they're making so much money, and that money is tax-free from the real estate, whereas their W-2 job is not tax-free. right? They're going to pay high level taxes there. They see so much more value making the money and not having to pay taxes on it. It's even more than what they were making in their job. So it's really refreshing, and I think to see a different perspective that people can actually do this. Like, it's something that can be done.
That's when the students, start becoming the teacher part.
Right.
That's college graduation, PhD graduation.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the MBA, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
is we're in the.
There you go. Thank you.
So for, you hear 1031, and that's totally different from cost segregation. And there's very strict rules and timelines on, you need to use certain people to hold cash, and you have timelines to, to deploy and identify property. Is there specific rules and regulations on, do you need to set this up before you buy a building? Do you have to do it within a year after buying a building? Like, what does that look like?
There are definitely rules and regulations with cost segregation. I mean, there's a whole, it's called the Cost Segregation Audit Techniques Guide, which is published, created by the IRS. So there's definitely rules and regulations, but the timing is not really one of them, which is an amazing thing. You can do it, and it's really best to set it up within the first year of ownership of a property to get your taxes set up the right way from the beginning. However, you don't need to. And one of the great advantages of this is that it really works to your benefit when it's best for you. Meaning, if you don't have a lot of income right now, maybe you bought a property and it's vacant and it's really not making money, or whatever, there's a lot of capital improvements, and you can't really use those extra deductions. They're just going to create a passive loss, meaning you will have more deductions than you have income. They'll carry forward. You can use them in the future, but you may not necessarily need them. The great thing about this is that you don't necessarily need to do it in the first years. And even if you've owned a property for a few years and never knew about cost segregation, you can get it done retroactively. And that's done even without amending your tax returns. You can catch up whatever depreciation that you missed, that you should have taken or could have taken. And then that's just a change of accounting method, and it's really something simple to do.
That's tremendous. It's all about the tax game, right?
It's really, like you said, it's learning the game, learning the strategies.
That's fantastic. So could you walk us through an example of maybe a recent one that you've done that helped a client out with their taxes? Just kind of walk us through some general numbers.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, I mean, just take, for example, let's take $1 million property. Let's say it's, I don't know, depends where in the country you're located, how many units that is, right?
Yep.
But, in California, it might be
Single
family.
Yeah. Hey, over in our market, man, that could be like 28 units sometimes.
Right. Exactly. No, I just literally just spoke with someone this morning who had a 22 unit property. A million is like 1,150,000, something like that. It really does depend. But let's just take that example. There's always going to be, as I mentioned, land that does not depreciate. Okay, so land, let's say it's 15%. That's pretty national average, which is going to give you about $850,000. That's called your depreciation basis. Now, without cost segregation, depreciation is still really cool. It's still really good. It means you get to take that $850,000 and divide that by 27.5. Now, mind you, if it's a commercial property, not residential multifamily, that's over a 39-year period. But let's just keep it simple and do 27.5 for residential properties, that multifamily is included. That's about $30,000 a year of tax write-off. So even if you're making $50,000 of net operating income from your property, you already have wiped off $30,000 of that with your regular ordinary depreciation deduction. Okay, which means that you're only going to be taxed on the remaining $20,000, which is already a great benefit of real estate, right? What cost segregation does is we send an engineer to the property. We have a full team of engineers that are trained in the tax code to know which items and their assets. So let's break it down. What are those things that actually depreciate faster? There's basically 4 categories when we look at a property. There's the land, which doesn't depreciate. There's the structure, and that's really what depreciates on a 27.5-year schedule. Okay, so that includes stuff like the walls, the doors, windows, roof, the floor, some main infrastructure things like plumbing and electric. But anything else that's in a property, and there's dozens of different types of assets that actually depreciate at faster rates. So for example, the third category is what's called personal property, which all depreciates on a 5-year schedule. So 5-year schedule means you add up all that stuff, which is like the cabinets, even stuff that's even attached, but it's still considered personal movable because it depreciates faster. carpeting, right? Flooring, window treatments, furniture, appliances, countertops, all that stuff, even bookshelves and all that kind of stuff, and a lot more, all depreciates in a 5-year schedule. We're going to look at that and identify what all those things are, how much they all cost, right? And that's what this cost segregation is, the weird name. It's like we're segregating these costs into different buckets, different categories, and now I'm taking that amount up front over a 5-year period as opposed to spreading it out. So instead of your $30,000 deduction each year, in the first 5 years, you're going to be able to front load maybe 15, 20, 25% of that. And that's going to give you an extra, in our example of $850,000 property, an extra, about $200,000 of tax deductions in the first 5 years. So instead of your $50,000 income that you only wiped out part of it, and you had the other half you had to pay tax on, you're going to wipe out the entire thing for the first 5 years, and then some. And you're going to have extra deductions that you could use against other properties. Or if you're a real estate professional, you can actually use that against any other income as well. So there's a lot in there. I know I packed in a lot.
It's awesome.
But
awesome.
But it's incredible. When people learn about this, they're like, what? You mean I'm actually going to get like $1 million property? I'm going to get like a $200,000 tax deduction? And the great thing is you can actually take that in the first year if you want. There's an option to front load that entire amount into the first year. It's called 100% bonus depreciation. And that's like, it just blows people's mind. Wait a minute. I put down $200,000 to buy this property, and now I get a $200,000 tax deduction the same year.
Yeah,
just blows people's minds.
It is mind blowing. Well, that also maybe I mean I'm assuming people would sell their properties a little bit faster because they're able to do this, and then with the 1031 they're rolling into other properties and things like that. Do you see that often? I mean, are people still holding on to it for a bit? I mean, I guess it doesn't make as much sense.
It does make sense. I mean, I like to look at it as part of a bigger strategy. So it doesn't necessarily, have to be something that you're going to sell in the next year, because if you have, just buy another property. I mean, yes, you could 1031 exchange it and buy something, or you could just buy something else or invest in another deal. Depreciation from one property can be used to offset income from all. So it's not necessarily, a lot of people like to hold on to properties, just keep it going. If it's cash flowing, why not?
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
So talk about cost segregation companies. And I mean, I'm sure you mentioned there's like a checklist or a whole laws regarding with the IRS. Are there any things that investors need to look out for when talking with companies? I'm sure not all companies are created equal, not all, within cost segregation. That's really important to know who you're working with to make sure that they're not cutting any corners, especially with the IRS, right? So can you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think the fact that you're dealing with taxes, you're dealing with the IRS, it's something that is very sensitive. You want to make sure that it's done right. And there is, like you said, there's the whole cost segregation audit techniques guide. There's a whole slew, there's actually a whole list of things that need to be done when you get a cost segregation study done. It's not just something that you can create this depreciation and just get it, pick a number out of a hat or whatever and just apply it to your taxes. I mean, one theoretically could do that, but then again, if you don't back it up, you'll be busted in an audit, of course.
Right.
I'm not advising to do that, of course, but you want to make sure they have experience. That's the main thing. And that, I think, according to the fact that IRS, you want to make sure that it's protected. In the event of an audit, what would happen? Is this going to hold up? And that's something that should be included. I mean, I know we include this in our engagement letter, that in the event of an audit, we stand behind it and we will, defend this in front of the IRS at no additional cost. It's just part of our service. And it's only happened a handful of times. I mean, in honesty, it's not that common to get audited. I mean, we've done over the past 16 years we've been in business, the company I work for, not me personally, but over 17,000 cost segregation studies. And been audited, our clients, we've had clients been audited, we've had to defend those reports at just a handful of times, like I think a little more than a dozen times. So it's not it's not something that's very common, but it definitely should be included in there, because you want to make sure everything is according to the letter of the law.
Sure. So we talked a lot about multifamily as an asset class. Do you see this being utilized a lot in other asset classes, self-storage or office or?
I'm a hotel guy, and I
hotels. Yeah.
Indian hotel world, bananas about, your world.
Yeah, 100%. It's done in every asset class. I know hotels are a great one because there's a lot of, FF&E, there's a lot of fixtures and things in there that get much more, all of that stuff is depreciated faster. So you can get even a little bit more than, a multifamily property would in a hotel. We do a lot of those. One really interesting thing, and I mentioned before, we do every type of asset class that's out there, but one really interesting asset class that has gotten a lot of attention recently, mainly because of the cap rates of multifamily have just been compressed so much that mobile home parks, or manufactured housing communities, as some people call them, are or trailer parks, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing. But you'll have, it just reduces the stigma, right? But what you have is they are actually a great candidate for cost segregation, and you wouldn't think so, because when you think about depreciation and land doesn't depreciate, like when you're buying a mobile home park, a lot of it's really just land, right? You have these dinky little homes that are spread out there, and oftentimes the owner themselves don't even own the homes. Like if you buy a park, a lot of times you'll buy a park and you'll have, I don't know, 100 trailer parks on there, whatever trailers on that in their lots, and you don't even own them. You rent them to the tenants. That's really kind of the business model of mobile home parks.
And they're cash cows.
And they're cash cows.
Yes.
But the great thing about them is that you can actually get a huge amount of depreciation from accelerated depreciation from it, because true, a lot of it's land, but whatever you're buying is land and whatever else there is, which I didn't mention earlier, but another category that is accelerated depreciation is something called land improvements. And every property will have this, including landscaping, pavement, a lot of stuff outside of the property. All that depreciates on a 15-year schedule, which means if you think about a mobile home park, all you have really is like the pavement, the concrete pads under each home. You have, some landscaping, maybe fencing, stormwater drainage system. All that stuff is called land improvements, and all that depreciates on a 15-year schedule. You can have literally, when I mentioned multifamily is somewhere around 20-25% of accelerated depreciation. Mobile home parks is like between 50 and 80% of accelerated depreciation based on your purchase price. So just take our example of that $1 million property we talked about, and instead of taking a $200,000 tax deduction in the first year, you could take a $500,000 or $600,000 or $700,000 tax deduction from your $1 million property. I've seen a lot of people just invest in mobile home parks specifically for this.
Yeah.
Wow.
I have a couple clients that, they'll just wait until they find it, or they find the right one. They'll just be patient. This is what they've been doing for 2 decades. They, learned from their family, and it's really great. You know what? This is the first time we've ever talked about that asset class. So thank you for that.
If you're looking for more people to discuss it, I know a lot of people in the industry, in the space.
Would love it. Yeah.
Happy to make this intro. Yeah.
Very good. I have my favorite question to ask. So, Yonah, what daily habits do you keep, to keep you at your top of your game, and that you attribute to your success?
Well, a lot of them are kind of behind the scenes. I would say I'm a very, as I mentioned before, a very religious, very spiritual person. I'm a Hasidic Jewish person, as can be seen from my appearance.
Wait, you're Jewish?
There you go. Are you too? Oh,
yeah, right. I was like, wait, I'm Indian, and I'm like, yes, dots, not feathers.
Funny, just to interject there, a story reminded me that the CEO of our company has been, an accountant for 30 years and established this company 16 years ago. And hotels are huge in the cost segregation space. He used to go to a lot of these hotel conferences. And all, we have a ton of big hotel clients that are, and he would go there, and all the Indians would the Indian hotel owners they call him, he's the Jewish Patel. That's what they call him.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. I mean, I've been to those hotel conferences. I grew up at those things. My family's in the mid-market hotel business, but I know what you're talking about. It's AHOA, the Asian American Hotel Owners Association.
That's right.
It is literally, I'm just going to throw this in because I never get to talk about it. But when I went to the first conference when I was like 16 years old, they're always in Vegas. It's all Patels in like a massive line I'm talking like massive, like 20 rows of Patel, then non-Patel, and then non-Asian. That's it. One booth for non-Patel and then one booth for non-Asian. It's just crazy how many Indians. I think we own like 40% of the industry or something. But
yeah, it is a lot. Anyways, to interject that, very spiritual. So I pray every day. It's something that I do. It's I study, old texts, and I think it's very important. That really gives me a lot of my success. Just kind of having that mindset, having that focus in a higher purpose in everything I do. And I think it really spills over to how I engage with my clients and how I act with a lot of people, especially with social media. A lot of what I do on social media is just really giving back. I know a lot of people focus on social media as a place to kind of advertise, but it's really not. If you think about it, social media, and Jeremy, I'm really active on LinkedIn and other platforms. It's social, right? I mean, that's what it is. There's a lot of social component to it. So just being yourself and being like who I am, just like giving person, just a giver, doing that as much as possible, that adds a lot to just our business in general.
And having children too. I have two. I can't imagine how you sleep or function, but that's tremendous.
So, in closing, can you tell our listeners if they want to get in touch with you, how they can do so?
Sure. The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. You can obviously go to my website, yonahweiss.com, which is up on the screen now. But if you do go on LinkedIn, make sure to mention that you heard us on the Real Estate Investor MBA podcast, and I'll make sure to tell Jeremy and tell us that you guys listen.
Yeah, love it.
Fantastic.
Very, very cool. I'm always the one that's like, look, we're going to go way over and then it's tough to produce. But you've been awesome. We have to have you back at some point. Usually we get some social media and email questions. They're like, hey, you should have asked this. And we're like, sorry, we'll figure it out. But yeah, Yonah, thank you so much. This is Jeremy Moyer, Tejas Gosai. We had Yonah, websites there. Check them out on LinkedIn and check us out all over at the internet, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher. I don't even remember them all. There's like 10 different places, but we love you guys. It's Real Estate Investor MBA. We'll check you out soon. Cheers.
Cheers.